That is the real Ting Yun. She just got a glow up after Runmei resurrected her, and her return will mark the start of Runmei's ascension to Eonhood. Of course, this Ting Yun is not to be confused with the one whose neck was broken by Phantylia in 1.2 Luofu Quest, because the real Ting Yun never returned to the Luofu before the start of the Luofu arc. Don't believe me? Just look at the intro in her drip marketing. A tactful Foxian girl whose appearance, name, and identity have all been stolen. Stolen by whom? Phantylia, of course. This was talked about during the quest itself. After Ting Yun broke her neck, the body simply disappeared without a trace. It didn't explode, it was not destroyed, it simply disappeared, like an illusion that had been broken. Welt believed that it meant the Ting Yun they met since their arrival on the Luofu had never been the real Ting Yun, but merely an image Phantylia devised to serve her own purposes, which was part of her grand plan to bring about Luofu self-destruction. This is also confirmed by Fu Xuan in one of her open-world dialogues. She says that the Ting Yun the crew met since they boarded the Luofu was impersonated by Phantylia. Fu Xuan does not know when the real Ting Yun was replaced, where she might be at the moment, or even whether she is still alive, and so Ting Yun has been declared dead. Another confirmation is in a letter addressed to Jing Yuan. This letter was sent by Hui Fu from the Realm Keeping Commission, and he talked about the current situation post-Ambrosial Arbor crisis. One of the things he mentioned was the unsettling rumor that started to spread within the commission after it was discovered that Ambassador Ting Yun had been replaced by an imposter, by Phantylia. This letter was released in 1.5, the same patch with the Foxian Tales of Haunted Trailblaze Continuance, the quest that talks about Heliobai in detail. Heliobai is some kind of flame spirit that is part of the denizens of abundance. From this quest, we learn that not only can Heliobai possess people, but they can also conjure up an illusion that is the spitting image of a person. At one point during the quest, Trailblazer and the Ghost Hunting Squad tried to dispel the Heliobas that was influencing Bailu. That Heliobas did not possess Bailu, but instead appeared as a second Bailu. They look so similar to each other, it was so hard to distinguish the two. And this is important because Phantylia is a Heliobas, a powerful one at that. So powerful that she even got Nanook's attention and was made their emanator. So I imagine it would not be too hard for her to conjure up an illusion of Ting Yun that could sustain itself for a long period of time. But still, to conjure up an illusion of Ting Yun, Phantylia would need to learn Ting Yun's mannerism in order to avoid any suspicions from people who knew Ting Yun. So it was likely that the real Ting Yun did come across Phantylia and that Phantylia killed her. I mean, if the real Ting Yun is still alive, why has she not made any contact with the Luofu? Or at the very least, why has she not contacted Yukong? Despite the official declaration of Ting Yun's death, Yukong still continues to find out the truth about Ting Yun's fate. She cannot exhaust the official resources because by this point, it is pretty much a personal endeavor, so the progress has been slow and minimal. The closest she was to the truth was via Fei Xiao, the Arbiter General of the Yaoqing who came to the Luofu for the Warden's Festival. Fei Xiao said that she had followed the last known route of Ting Yun's ship before the crisis and had found the wreckage of it. Unfortunately, there were no survivors and no cargo. However, someone had arrived at the scene before she did, and that someone was none other than Runmei. This implies that there might be survivors, but Runmei got her hands on them before Fei Xiao could. I talked about this at length in this other video, and if you're interested, a link to it is in the description box below. Then, after some more Luofu shenanigans in 2.4 and 2.5 quest, we got a teaser to what seemed to be a conversation between Runmei and Ting Yun. Runmei asked if Ting Yun remembered her name, and Ting Yun said she did. She was even able to recite her job position and her origin completely to perfection despite sounding weak, having just regained consciousness after her resurrection. Whatever that Runmei did to resurrect Ting Yun, she did it to perfection. The proof that Runmei was the one who resurrected Ting Yun is evident all over Ting Yun's strip marketing. The first thing that caught my attention was the presence of 4-star Ting Yun as a reflection in the water. This reminds me of Runmei's light cone past self in mirror that records Runmei and a reflection of herself in a mirror. Another character that I'm reminded of is Akron in her light cone along the passing shore. The one in red and monochrome is the real Akron, while purple Akron is her reflection in the water. And the same can be said about Ting Yun. She is no longer her ambassador self that is reflected in the water because that identity, name, and appearance have been stolen by Phantylia. Now she is simply Fuge, a Foxian girl who has experienced life and death and has been given a new life. Her ponytail is no more, now her hair is styled more similarly to Runmei's hair and is held together by 3 hairpins that also look similar to the one that Runmei uses. Her dress is decorated with flowers, and I won't be surprised if Runmei was the one who made it for Ting Yun. After all, embroidery and flowers are Runmei things. But I'm not too sure about the golden flower accessories on her dress. They could be of the same species as the pink flowers, which are Nolamba nocifera, also known as sacred lotus, that in Buddhism represents purity, rebirth, and divinity. It symbolizes a rise from a dark place into beauty and rebirth because that is exactly how a lotus flower grows. They bloom directly out of muddy and murky water and produce beautiful colored blossoms. Which is a great metaphor for Tingyun's journey because despite her encounter with Phantylia, presumably having been killed by the Lord Ravager, Tingyun still came out a beautiful blossom. I also love how those two lotuses sort of intertwine with each other, making them look like a DNA symbol, which is also something that is related to Ranmei. I'm telling you, Ranmei is all over Tingyun's splash art. We can also see something that looks like a tattoo on her right shoulder, which reminds me of Phantylia, so this could be the brand of destruction that is left on her person. Also, she has not one but 5 tails, at least 5 that I can count, and in Japanese folklore, kitsune, foxes that have the ability to shapeshift into humans, can have up to 9 tails. The more tails a kitsune has, the older, the wiser, and the more powerful it is. So Tingyun now having 5 tails could mean that she is stronger than 4-star Tingyun. I mean, she is a 5-star after all. Her name Fuge in Latin means flight or escape. In musical terms, it refers to a type of composition where melodies are constantly repeated, transformed, and overlaid across multiple voices. The repetition does not happen at the same time but is introduced a bit later after the main melody is played, which is pretty cool if we consider that Tingyun was first introduced in 1.0 and then the real Tingyun appeared in 2.5. Patch 1.0 is the main melody, 2.5 is the second. One last thing that intrigued me from her drip marketing is that last sentence. The one who has experienced life and death and is given a new life. Seems like Ranmei is getting closer to becoming an Aeon. See, abundance is a path that is closely tied with both propagation and permanence. When Thazeronth was still alive and kicking and overpopulating the universe with their self-replication, Lan the Hunt had yet to ascend to Aeonhood. Which is interesting because they ascended in response to the immortality bestowed by Yaoshe the Abundance to the Shanzhou people, right? And Yaoshe, according to the simulated universe, was also not present during the Swarm Disaster era, implying that they must have ascended afterwards. Thazeronth themselves ascended to Aeonhood because of a desire born from loneliness. They were the last of their species, and it motivated them to propagate and spread across the universe. According to Kafka, when they ascended, they split the path of permanence. And I just cannot get that last bit out of my head since I first heard it. Like, what do you mean Thazeronth split a path? And so it got me thinking about these 3 eons and realizing that they are eons that are related to life as well as immortality. The permanence is all about the everlasting existence of oneself. Their descendants, the Vidyadhara, are unable to have offspring. There's only a set number of them in the universe, so if they die in battle, it will permanently decrease their population. What they can do, however, is reincarnation. When a Vidyadhara gets very old, they will go through a hatching rebirth and come out looking young again. This is a cycle that they go through forever, and every time they have completed their rebirth, they will lose all memories of their previous life, becoming a completely new person. So, in a way, their bodies are immortal, but the idea of the self is not. Same body, different individuals. The propagation is the other way around. Thazeronth and every individual member of the swarm does not have an immortal body. But because each one of them is a replica originating from Thazeronth, their idea of self is immortal. Different bodies, same individual. And then we have the abundance that is the best of both paths as well as the worst. Those who are blessed by Yaoshe will gain immortality, right? They don't get to a point where they must go through a hatching rebirth like the Vidyadhara does or self-replicate like the swarm does. Thus, both their body and their idea of self are immortal. On the flip side, if they get to live to be very old, they will eventually be stricken with Mara. Their body will transform and mutate until they lose their human form, thus the loss of the body. Their mind will be inflicted with violent tendencies until they lose their sanity, thus the loss of the idea of self. But now we have Tingyun. She is a Foxian, a race that is also blessed by Yaoshe the Abundance. According to her drip marketing, she has died possibly after her encounter with Phantylia. But now she is alive again. She has been given a new life, presumably by Ranmei because that's what she does. She resurrected her parents, a Genius Society member, etc., etc. So, if someone is dead, right, and then they can be resurrected, and the resurrected version functions just like their old self, and then they die again, and then they get resurrected again, so on and so forth, doesn't that basically mean that the person lives forever? Doesn't that make them immortal? Better yet, Ruanmei's version of immortality might not have the Mara side effect that Yaoshe has, which could have something to do with the propagation fragments or the Leviathan fossils, who knows. But if that is the case, wouldn't that make Ruanmei the better Aeon of immortality? Or perhaps she will ascend to become the Aeon of creation, covering Yaoshe's path of abundance within it, thus absorbing Yaoshe? I am super excited for 2.7, not gonna lie.